Welcome to the Spark Creativity Teacher Podcast, a podcast for English teachers in search of creative teaching strategies. I'm Betsy Potash, and I'm glad to welcome you to episode 45, a look into some of Tracee Orman's favorite creative classroom strategies. In this episode, we'll be talking about using memes as a class project, how to incorporate interactive notebooks as an engaging strategy, but not let them get old, the power of YA fiction, and more. I'm so delighted to have Tracee on the show, and I think you're going to find this one of the most helpful episodes so far in generating a barrage of new ideas you can use right away. Tracee has been teaching and writing curriculum for almost 20 years, and she is a powerhouse of creativity and outside-the-box thinking. With over 20,000 teachers following her curriculum store on TPT, you know she's doing things right. I love to discover new ideas on her blog, Mrs. Orman's Classroom, and I think you are going to love hearing from her today. I'm so glad to welcome you, Tracee. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Betsy. It's great to be here.
Oh, good. I want to start just by giving you a chance to introduce yourself to my listeners. Can you tell me a little bit about what you do and how you got to where you are?
Sure. I'm a high school English teacher. Actually, this year I'm not in the classroom. It's my first year out of the classroom, working just on curriculum writing. But I taught for 18 years high school English in a small town in Illinois. And before that, I did middle school. I did some special ed. I was a librarian for a little bit because I didn't quite know when I graduated from college. I was journalism and English double major. And I wasn't education. My husband is a teacher. And so my first job was as a special education aide in a contained classroom. And I fell in love with that. The teacher let me teach all of the novels and all of the language arts in that classroom. And so then I went back and got my teacher's certification to become a teacher. And my first job was as a librarian, actually, after I went through everything. And I love that, but it was at a private school, and I did miss teaching English. So so it's been quite a journey. But
that's really cool, though, that you have that background in the library. I didn't know that. That helps me understand your voluminous knowledge of so many novels. That's awesome.
I love books.
Yes, me too. I've thought sometimes that being a librarian would kind of be my dream job, just because it's so amazing to be around books all the time and connecting students with books.
Right, exactly. I same here. I loved it. I really did. But I did miss being in the classroom too. So
yeah, well, teaching is like the best of both worlds because you get to do the engaging creative stuff and match students with books.
Yes, that is true.
All right, well, I'm excited for this show because we're gonna go kind of fast paced through a whole bunch of the wonderful creative strategies that you blog about and that you design curriculum for. And I want to start with memes. You are the meme lady. I just love all the creative ways you use them in your classroom. Can you share a little bit about that?
Oh, sure. I'm so addicted to memes.
So are all my
terrible.
students.
It started, I think when we were reading The Hunger Games several years ago. And one of my students brought in this hilarious meme, and I'm like, oh my gosh, where did you find this? And then they just introduced me to this whole site, like high school memes. I think that was the name of it. I don't even know if it's still around, but we just died laughing. So I'm like, why don't you guys create your own memes, based on the book and different chapters? And they were just so excited that they got to do that for an assignment. And I taught in a one-on-one school, so they all had laptops, so it was really easy. Yeah. But I did find there's a lot of really inappropriate sites out there. for generating memes, so kind of learned that the hard way. So that's when I just kind of, started looking myself and getting some templates and then sharing those with them and having them create. It's still, best for them to create them on their own, but I was just amazed at what they would, how they would connect with the novel, just with memes, and how deep their understanding of it and just different aspects of it. One of them I remember with Catching Fire, a student had done one where, it was basically about how they were starving. And I mean, it was funny, but yet it was like, wow, this is really deep. This is really sad. And we had a great discussion about that just based off of that meme. So I've been hooked ever since.
Yeah.
And yeah, sometimes there's some years where the kids are like, oh gosh, please don't, we don't want to do this, but, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. We'll do different things. But for the most part, I've had great success with having students create them and, just doing different things with them.
I think those are some really great tips that you need to be aware of inappropriate meme creators and not just give them total freedom. Yes. And exactly. I like the idea of using them as a bridge to discussion too. Do you have students just kind of present their memes back to the class, or do you put them all up as a display and then start discussing?
I've done it both ways. Before, I've had students just share off of their computer, one by one, and we talked about them. And a lot of times we'll start with that, and then I do like for them, to give me a copy of it, and I print it out and would put it up on the board, put them all up, because they love seeing all of the different memes.
Yeah.
So
I would think so. That would be one of the most fun parts about it for me. It would be the display that would come out of it at the end. But I'm a little display obsessed.
Yes. I'm the same way. It really helped with when we were reading Julius Caesar, to have them create a meme after each act.
Oh, that's
and then we put them up act by act. And some kids who were like, oh, well, that's what that part meant. They got it because of the meme that one of their classmates created. So, I mean, that was that's always fun to do that. Use it with Shakespeare or any text that's maybe a little bit more difficult for students to understand, and especially the higher level students who really get it. I mean, that's a way they can really help, the struggling students.
It's like the world's quickest, most entertaining Cliff Notes.
It is.
I had one group of 10th graders once that I had to teach Dante's Inferno to, and I felt like every day I was just trying to do my sad little recap so they would sort of remotely understand what had happened. And I think memes would have been a much better solution.
Yes. You can convey a lot with very little.
Yeah.
And it does force them, to try to be concise too.
Yeah.
To try to fit it all in as few words as possible.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like a thesis or a theme statement in that way. I mean, they just really have to get it boiled down.
Right.
I like it. All right. So pushing along, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about interactive notebooks. And this is a kind of a selfish question because I've been seeing interactive notebooks everywhere. I always am in love with the pictures I see of them, but I don't feel like I have a grasp of how I would use them in my classroom. So I'd love to hear about how you use them and what you like about them.
Well, I use it mainly with To Kill a Mockingbird when we read that novel, because I think I don't, I tried one year to use it for several different units, and it got old a little bit. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to try to do this in chunks, and then it just worked out where using it for the novel kind of helped. And one thing I like about them is it's hands-on, and since my students are so technology, dependent. Yeah. I mean, and everything's typing, and they don't get to work with paper as much. And I think that that's important for them to actually handwrite some assignment, not every assignment, but to do some of that. And even the cutting. I mean, I was just so shocked at some of my high school students. I'm like, oh my gosh, did you not learn how to cut?
Oh, that's so funny.
So that practice, I guess, is good even at the high school level. But
throwback to kindergarten just for a moment.
Yeah, what I found is if I gave them like a little question to think about, ponder while they cut, because that was one of the things is, we don't have time in class for them to sit there and cut pages out. And I certainly don't want to, cut them all for them.
Right.
So sometimes I would give it to them for homework, and there always happened to be a couple students who just loved to cut, and I'd see them doing everybody else's in study hall. I don't care. This is one assignment where you go right ahead and do someone else's homework for them. But what I did find when they were cutting in class is if I gave them a question, they sat there and talked and just had conversations about the book and different things while they were doing this. And it was just really nice. And I had my tables set up in groups. So they were like groups of 4, and, just had a little bucket in the middle where they could put all their scraps of paper and everything. And they're like, this is really nice, kind of a de-stressor for them to just be able to do things like that. And then even just assembling them in the book and then writing down different things. A lot of the students really enjoyed, doing that rather than being on their laptops or, so yeah, I don't know. I was really happy that that worked in my classroom. So
yeah, I can really picture that as being a meditative activity that would actually kind of free them to say what's on their minds, because sometimes when your hands are busy, then you're so much more relaxed,
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
I like that. And I also like what you said about doing it for one unit. I found throughout my teaching career that there will be a new pedagogy and there will be a push that it's like the new thing that everyone should do all the time. And I'm always like, no, that's going to be one great new thing in my toolkit, and I'm going to continue to do all the other things that I've developed.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think a little bit goes a long way, but they do enjoy it. So, and for vocabulary, a lot of times just sorting out, words or figurative language. I have some of those activities with them, like just pairing up the examples with, what it is and doing different things in their interactive notebook. It helped them to realize that this was something they could just, kind of talk with their, the other students at the table with, and figure it out together. So
yeah,
it worked really well.
Oh, that's great to hear. I'm really interested in trying that out at some point now.
Should.
All right, we're going to go forward into the wide world of YA. You're known a lot throughout teaching circles for your knowledge of the Hunger Games. And so I know that that's one of your favorites, but I want to ask you to draw on your English teacher and your librarian knowledge and recommend for teachers who want to explore more YA, but are maybe feeling nervous about it, because I think sometimes teachers have a hard time getting over the hurdle of like, okay, this is not the canon. Other teachers may not respect what I'm doing when I start to bring this in. Like, what titles would you recommend that a teacher feeling tentative maybe begin with?
That's a good question. Because I found when I started with the Hunger Games, that was something that I had a general English class. It was the lower level students, and we had read the Odyssey, and it was all boys and one girl in the class. Mm-hmm. And I thought the Odyssey would go over really well, and it didn't. It completely tanked. And so when I begged my principal to buy a classroom set of the Hunger Games. He was like, "Yep, if you think that'll do it,
Oh,
go
that's
for it."
amazing.
Yeah, and so they were hooked right away, and so I realized, I mean, these are kids that they weren't going to read anything, but they would come to class early, and they would want to stay late or come in during their study hall and read. And I mean, kids who never read a book up until that point, coming in high school. And so I just, ever since then, well, I've always kind of felt like, I don't care what you're reading as long as you're interested in it, what level it is. I do like to push them a little bit, but I think if it's something the kids are into, they're going to read it. And I would much rather assign a book or have them, choose a book that they're actually going to read than one that they're just going to read the Spark Notes or whatever. So,
Yeah.
So I do tend to kind of, give them more freedom with that. But there's so many good young adult books out right now. The Hate You Give is such a great novel. I'm sure
Yes.
you've probably read it, and I think it's so current, and there could be so many great discussions
Yes.
that teachers could have. One of my recent favorites, Children of Blood and Bone. I don't know if you've read
I
that.
picked it up from the library, and then I got a little bit intimidated by the darkness. It was very dark at the beginning.
It's not, I don't know. It's not really a book that I would typically be drawn to. I'm not, kind of the whole magic, realm or whatever. But gosh, I did get hooked on that.
Into it. Yeah. Well, it's been, I've seen it recommended in a lot of places. And I mean, the Hunger Games is also very dark. Students sometimes relate to that,
They do. The Legend series by Marie Lu, that was another series that my students got into. They really enjoyed, and that that's a dystopian and can be dark as well.
Yeah,
it's divergent. But gosh, Dear Martin is another one that is current contemporary fiction that I think would be great for teachers. I think I guess. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say I think it's so great just to add these to your choice library. I mean, even if you're feeling nervous about teaching it, I could never get my department chair to go for the Hunger Games. The year that I taught Dante's Inferno and Chaucer to my 10th graders, most of whom spoke English as their second language, I begged for the Hunger Games. And I was just like, please, I really think it would make such a difference. And I remember I was like brought to tears in the conversation. I was so passionate about it. And he was just like, nope, we don't read stuff like that. And I was like, okay, fine.
Oh, man.
I'm going to put all these books in my choice reading library, and we're going to spend most of our time doing that.
Yes. Yes, definitely. Mm-hmm. Patrick Ness has The Knife of Never Letting Go. I don't know if you
yes
heard of that one, but that's another good one. And then I do love the series. I mean, I kind of hate the whole like trilogies or series, because it's like, oh, are you kidding me? I have to wait. But it's great to get kids hooked on those, because then they're going to keep reading.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and I think that movie is going to be coming out soon. So
that's always a good hook.
Right. Yes.
In the reading library. You saw it as a movie. Now read it as a book that is better.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, wonderful. Those are a lot of wonderful titles for people to get started with. I saved one more question, one of my favorite questions, which is, what's one of your favorite go-to creative projects for any novel?
Oh, gosh. I have so many. And I mean, you're so creative as well. But I mean, I have kind of just an arsenal of just little creative activities and questions and some of the questions are just so far out, like they're just bizarre. But it gets the students thinking. But in my pack, I always have what would this character tweet, or
Yes.
that's always a good one, or a playlist,
Yes.
for something that a character would listen to, or what song would be would describe the mood at this point in the story or novel.
Yes.
Character tags is another one that way back when on Facebook, when people would tag, have a picture of different characters or whatever, and tag people to them, like person who's most like Bart Simpson or something like that. And so I have students do that with whatever they're interested in at the time, whatever's popular. Okay, well, which character right now is reminds you of, whatever the latest thing
Justin
is.
Bieber or
Right.
yeah.
Pop, pop singer or something like that. But
That's great. I haven't seen that before. I like that idea a lot.
it's really, can be really simple and quick, but you get some interesting answers, like when they have to pair them up, or even pair them up to what brand of, shoes would this character, or just different things, or what kind of cell phone would, that person most likely carry. Just different things like that get some kind of thinking differently about the character and their traits and motivations and things like that. So
I always think that kind of question can really lead to a depth of character analysis. Like I think it on the surface it sounds so quick, what kind of shoe, that doesn't even make sense. But then when the student is actually thinking about it, and they have to think about the branding, and they think about what people would do in different shoes, and it actually leads to like this great deep dive into the character, and it can be such a nice warm up for discussion. It takes them into the book and gets them really thinking.
Yes, absolutely. Another good one is perfume or cologne. What brand? Yeah. Or what, and not even necessarily the character, but it could be, with the tone or the mood that is set. Is this going to be more of a spicy or, musk? Or is it sweet, floral, different things like that.
Oh, that's really interesting. I love it. Well, I have to say I love all that you do, and it's really been a pleasure to have you on. Thank you for coming on.
It has been my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
When listeners want to connect more with you, where should they look? What are some of your favorite platforms?
Absolutely. My favorite, and the one I spend the most time on, is Instagram for sure. I'm probably on that more than anything else. But I can be found on pretty much everything else except Snapchat. I never really did get into that.
Me neither. I'm afraid of Snapchat.
Yeah, I feel like I would find my son or
exactly. All your students would find you.
Or right, exactly. I'm like, yeah, I don't know, but Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, of course.
Perfect.
Teachers pay teachers. Yeah.
I will link to it all in the show notes today so people can find you on their favorite platform.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to check out the show notes for a write-up of the main ideas in the show and to learn more about Tracee, just head to www.nowsparkcreativity.com and click on the podcasts tab at the top of the page. Also, if you've been enjoying the show for a while, maybe today's the day you've got a minute to write a review on iTunes. I'd love to hear from you. Listener reviews really inspire me to keep this show going, and every single one is a powerful reminder to me that this podcast is making a difference. The Spark Creativity Teacher podcast is a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. The Education Podcast Network, podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. For more podcast recommendations, visit edupodcastnetwork.com.